Hi, I'm the man who spent 8 years turning a failing logistics company into a multi-million-dollar empire, only to be replaced by my boss's son. Right there in the conference room I redesigned, surrounded by contracts I negotiated and clients I brought in. My boss looked me in the eye and said, "Tyler's got the pedigree for this. You've got the work ethic. But this company needs legacy, not labor." I didn't argue. I didn't beg. I just reached into my briefcase and slid a manila folder across the table. What was inside? Let's just say the look on their faces made 8 years of loyalty worth losing. By the time that meeting ended, the son was escorted out by security. My boss was on the phone with his attorney, and I walked out with something they never saw coming. This is how I made them pay for their greed. And trust me, they paid dearly. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. I walked into the conference room at Summit Freight Solutions, expecting our quarterly strategy meeting. It was a Thursday morning, the kind where spring light filters through glass windows and makes everything feel possible. I had my tablet tucked under one arm, a coffee in the other hand, and a leather portfolio filled with projections for our upcoming expansion into the Pacific Northwest. 3 new distribution hubs. 12 corporate contracts already lined up. Revenue projections that would double what we'd done the year before. This was my territory. My expertise. For 8 years, I'd built the operational backbone of this company from the ground up. When I started, Summit was a small regional trucking outfit with 6 trucks, a handful of drivers, and an owner named Harold Brennan who had more debt than clients. I came in as a logistics coordinator making $38,000 a year. No benefits. No equity, just a handshake and a promise that if I could turn things around, we'd both win. And I did turn it around. I renegotiated vendor contracts, optimized routing software, brought in automation tools that cut fuel costs by 18% in the first year alone. I worked 70-hour weeks. I slept in my car during peak season to make sure shipments went out on time. I missed birthdays, holidays, and my own father's retirement party because Harold needed me on site during an audit. By year 3, we had 24 trucks. By year 5, we had partnerships with 3 major retailers. By year 7, Harold bought a vacation home in Asheville and started talking about legacy. His legacy. Not ours. His. But I didn't complain. I believed in the work. I believed that loyalty would be rewarded. That hard work mattered more than pedigree or connections. I believed Harold when he told me I was indispensable. I should have known better. When I pushed open the conference room door, the air felt different. Too still, too formal. Harold sat at the head of the long oak table, the one we'd custom ordered 2 years ago when we moved into this building. His posture was stiff, rehearsed. He wasn't alone. To his right sat someone I didn't recognize at first. Mid-20s, clean-cut, wearing a tailored navy suit that probably cost more than my monthly rent. He had Harold's jawline, the same sharp nose, the same way of sitting with his hands folded like he owned the room before he'd done anything to earn it. Then it clicked. Tyler Brennan. Harold's son. I'd met Tyler exactly twice, once at a company holiday party 3 years ago where he spent the entire evening talking about his MBA program at some private university I'd never heard of. The second time was last summer at Harold's 60th birthday, where Tyler arrived late, stayed for 30 minutes, and left early to catch a flight to Barcelona. He'd never worked a day at Summit. Never toured a warehouse, never sat in a dispatch office at 3 in the morning, troubleshooting a routing crisis. But there he was, sitting in the seat that usually belonged to our CFO. To Harold's left sat 2 people I didn't know. A woman in her 50s with silver-rimmed glasses and a leather briefcase. Attorney. Next to her, a younger man with a tablet, probably a paralegal or HR consultant. My stomach tightened. I set my coffee down slowly on the table. Morning. Is this still the strategy meeting, or did I miss a memo? Harold cleared his throat. He wouldn't look directly at me. That's when I knew. Damien, he said, using my full name instead of the usual Pierce he'd called me for 8 years. Thank you for coming. We need to talk about the future of Summit. Okay, I said carefully, pulling out a chair across from Tyler. Let's talk. Harold folded his hands on the table, mirroring his son's posture. It looked rehearsed. Practiced. Summit has grown beyond what either of us imagined when you started. Harold began. "You've been instrumental in that growth. No one's denying that. Instrumental. Past tense. I felt the ground shift beneath me. But as we move into the next phase, the board and I have determined that we need leadership with a different skill set. Someone who understands corporate strategy at a higher level. Someone with formal training in business development and stakeholder relations." I stared at him. "Harold, I've been doing business development for 8 years. I brought in 70% of our current client base." "Operational business development," Harold corrected. "What we need now is strategic vision." Tyler leaned forward, and for the first time, he spoke. His voice was smooth, confident, completely unearned. "What my father is trying to say is that Summit is transitioning from a services company to a logistics platform. That requires a different approach. Fresh perspectives. An understanding of venture capital, private equity, scale dynamics." I looked at Tyler, then back at Harold. "You're replacing me." Harold finally met my eyes. There was something in his expression, guilt maybe, but it was buried under layers of justification and entitlement. "Effective today, you're being transitioned out of daily operations. Tyler will assume the role of Chief Operating Officer." My role. The position I'd built from nothing. "And what about me?" I asked, my voice steady despite the anger building in my chest. "You'll be offered a consulting package." The attorney interjected, sliding a folder across the table. 6 months of severance, health benefits through the end of the year, and a non-disparagement agreement. A non-disparagement agreement. They wanted to pay me to stay quiet. Tyler smiled. Not a kind smile, a victorious one. "You should be proud, Damien. You built something solid here. But every company needs to evolve. My father's bringing me in, because this business needs someone who can think beyond trucks and contracts. Someone who understands branding, investor relations, market positioning." He said it like I was a mechanic being replaced by an engineer. Like 8 years of grinding, strategizing, and saving this company from bankruptcy meant nothing compared to his Ivy League degree and his last name. Harold leaned back in his chair, trying to look sympathetic. "You've done great work, Damien, but Tyler's got the pedigree for this. You've got the work ethic. But this company needs legacy, not labor." Legacy, not labor. Those words hung in the air like poison. I didn't yell. I didn't slam my fists on the table. I didn't do any of the things they probably expected. Instead, I reached into my briefcase, pulled out a manila folder I'd been carrying for 3 years, and placed it gently on the table. "Before I sign anything," I said calmly, "I think you should read this." Harold frowned. "What is it?" "Open it." He hesitated, then slid the folder toward himself. Tyler leaned over to look. The attorney adjusted her glasses and watched carefully. Inside was a single document. 14 pages, printed on legal paper, notarized, signed by both Harold Brennan and myself, dated 8 years ago. It was our original partnership agreement. The one we drafted in the back of a diner when Summit was 3 months from bankruptcy, and I agreed to work for almost nothing in exchange for a future stake in the company. Harold's face went pale. This was symbolic. We never formalized it." "Actually," I said, tapping the document, "we did. Page 11, Clause 22. You signed it." "I signed it. Your attorney at the time witnessed it. It was filed with the county clerk's office as an addendum to Summit's original operating agreement." The attorney leaned forward, reading quickly. Her expression shifted from neutral to alarmed. "What does it say?" Tyler asked, irritation creeping into his voice. I looked directly at him. "It says that any executive decision affecting ownership, leadership structure, or profit sharing requires mutual consent from both founding partners. That's your father and me. It also states that if either party attempts to remove the other without cause or due process, the remaining partner has the right to trigger a full audit and freeze all major business decisions pending arbitration." Harold's hands were trembling now. "Damien, that was from when we were desperate. Things have changed." "Not legally," the attorney said quietly, still reading. "If this document is valid and filed, then you may have violated the terms by unilaterally removing Mr. Pierce from his position." Tyler's smirk disappeared. "Wait, so what does that mean?" I stood slowly, buttoning my jacket. "It means your promotion is on hold." It means any decisions made in this room today are void until we go through arbitration. And it means that if you want me out, you're going to have to prove cause in front of a neutral third party. I looked at Harold one last time. You taught me to protect myself in business, Harold. I learned from the best. Then I picked up my coffee, turned, and walked out of the conference room. Behind me, I heard Tyler's voice, sharp and panicked. Dad, what the hell is he talking about? Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time. So if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now, back to the story. I didn't wait to hear Harold's answer. I just kept walking. The elevator ride down felt longer than it should have. My heart was pounding, adrenaline still coursing through my veins, but my hands were steady. I'd been carrying that folder for 3 years, ever since Harold started talking about bringing Tyler into the business. I'd hoped I'd never need it. But hope doesn't protect you in business. Documentation does. I walked out into the parking lot, the mid-morning sun almost blinding after the fluorescent chill of the conference room. My phone buzzed before I even reached my car. Text from Harold, "We need to talk. Don't do anything rash." I didn't respond. Another buzz. This time from Garrett Flynn, our CFO. What the hell just happened? Tyler's in Harold's office screaming. Legal's on the phone. Are you okay? I typed back, I'm fine. Let them scream. Then I turned off my phone. I didn't go home. I couldn't sit still. Instead, I drove to the one place that always helped me think clearly. Lakewood Park. A quiet stretch of green space on the north side of town where I used to go running before work back when I still had time for things like running. I parked near the trail entrance, got out, and just walked. The air smelled like cut grass and pine. Families were scattered across the lawn. A couple of kids were flying a kite near the pond. Normal life. The kind of life I hadn't had in 8 years because I'd been too busy building someone else's empire. I found a bench overlooking the water and sat down. For the first time in hours, I let myself breathe. What did I just do? I'd burned the bridge. There was no walking back into that office like nothing happened. Harold would never forgive the humiliation. Tyler would spend every waking moment trying to find a way around that partnership agreement. And me? I'd just declared war on the only job I'd had since college. But I wasn't scared. I was angry. And beneath the anger was something else. Clarity. For 8 years I'd given Harold everything. My time, my health, my relationships. I'd sacrificed a social life, a dating life, even basic self-care because I believed that loyalty would be rewarded, that hard work would be recognized, that doing the right thing mattered. I was wrong. Harold didn't value loyalty, he valued convenience. And the moment his son decided he wanted to play CEO, I became inconvenient. My phone buzzed again. I'd turned it back on out of habit. This time, it was a call from Allison Hughes, our head of client relations. I answered. Damien, what is going on? Her voice was tight, worried. I just got out of a meeting with Harold and Tyler. They're telling people you resigned. I didn't resign, I said flatly. I know. Garrett told me what really happened. Damien, this is insane. You can't just walk away from this company. You built it. I'm not walking away, Allison. I'm protecting what I built. She was quiet for a moment. Then, what do you need? That question hit harder than I expected. Allison had been with Summit for 5 years. I'd hired her personally after she'd been laid off from a competitor. She was sharp, ethical, and one of the few people in that building I actually trusted. I need to know who's on my side, I said. Not publicly, not yet. But I need to know who's willing to tell the truth if this goes to arbitration. I'm in, she said without hesitation. And I know at least 4 others who will be too. Harold's making a mistake, and people see it. Thank you. Don't thank me yet, she said. Tyler's already started making changes. He fired 2 dispatch managers this morning. Said they were redundant. He's trying to put his mark on things fast. My jaw clenched. He's panicking. Yeah, well, so is Harold. He's been on the phone with attorneys all morning. I think they're trying to find a way to invalidate your partnership agreement. They won't, I said. It's airtight. I made sure of it. Good. Because if they force you out, this company's going to fall apart. Half the clients only work with us because of you. That was true, and I knew it. But I didn't want to blow up Summit. I just wanted what was fair. After I hung up with Allison, I sat on that bench for another 20 minutes, watching the water ripple in the breeze. Then I made a decision. I wasn't going to wait for Harold and Tyler to come after me. I was going to go on the offensive. I drove to the office of Bryce Chambers, an attorney I'd worked with on a few contract disputes over the years. He was sharp, relentless, and had a reputation for taking on fights other lawyers avoided. His office was in a converted brick building downtown, the kind of place that looked unassuming from the outside but had a shark's edge once you stepped inside. Bryce met me in his office, a cluttered space filled with case files, legal books, and a coffee maker that looked like it hadn't been cleaned since the 90s. "Damian Pierce," he said, leaning back in his chair with a grin. "I had a feeling I'd be hearing from you today. Word travels fast. In this town? Always." He gestured to the chair across from his desk. "Sit. Tell me everything." I laid it all out. The meeting, the replacement, the partnership agreement. Harold's attempt to erase 8 years of work with a severance package and a smile. Bryce listened without interrupting, occasionally jotting notes on a yellow legal pad. When I finished, he leaned forward, fingers steepled under his chin. "First of all," he said, "you're in a much stronger position than you think. That partnership agreement is gold. If it's filed and notarized, Harold's going to have a hell of a time getting around it." That's what I thought. But his attorney didn't seem too worried. Bryce smirked. "That's because she's hoping you'll back down. Most people do when they're outnumbered and outspent, but you're not most people, are you?" "Not anymore." "Good. Because here's what's going to happen. Harold's going to try to settle. He'll offer you money, maybe a title change, some vague promise about staying involved. He'll make it sound generous. But what he's really doing is buying your silence and your exit. I'm not interested in a settlement, I figured. So here's what we do. We file for arbitration immediately. We force Harold to prove cause for your removal. And while we're at it, we request a full financial audit of Summit." I blinked. "An audit? You've been running operations for 8 years, right? You know where every dollar goes. But I'm willing to bet Harold's been playing fast and loose with the books, especially if he's been planning to bring Tyler in. Rich guys always hide money when they're trying to squeeze someone out." He wasn't wrong. I'd noticed irregularities over the past year. Small things. Vendor payments that didn't match invoices. Consulting fees to companies I'd never heard of. I'd flagged them to Harold, and he'd brushed them off as accounting errors. "If we find something," Bryce continued, "it's leverage. Big leverage." I nodded slowly. "Let's do it." Bryce grinned. "Now we're talking. I'll draft the arbitration filing today. Expect Harold to lose his mind when he gets the notice." "Good." As I stood to leave, Bryce called after me. "One more thing, Damian. This is going to get ugly. Harold's going to come at you hard. He'll try to discredit you, maybe even dig into your personal life. Are you ready for that?" I looked back at him. "I've been ready for 3 years. Then let's make them pay." I walked out of Bryce's office feeling something I hadn't felt in a long time. Control. I didn't go back to the office. There was no point. By now, Harold would have spun some story to the staff about my voluntary departure or mutual decision to pursue other opportunities. Corporate speak for, "We stabbed him in the back, and we're hoping no one asks questions." Instead, I went home. My apartment was a modest 1-bedroom in a complex on the east side of town. Nothing fancy. I'd always told myself I'd upgrade once Summit went public, or once Harold gave me the equity stake he kept promising. That day never came. Now I was glad I hadn't spent money I didn't have, trying to impress people who didn't care. I dropped my keys on the kitchen counter and stood there for a moment, staring at the space. It was quiet. Too quiet. For 8 years, my life had been noise. Phones ringing, dispatch radios crackling, drivers shouting updates from loading docks, clients demanding answers. Harold's voice booming across the office, calling my name like I was a dog who'd fetch whatever he needed. Now, standing in my silent apartment, I realized something. I couldn't remember the last time I just existed without someone needing something from me. I poured myself a glass of water, sat down on the couch, and stared at the wall. My phone buzzed on the coffee table. I ignored it. It buzzed again. And again. I finally picked it up and scrolled through the messages. Garrett Flynn, Harold's lawyering up. Be careful. Allison Hughes, Tyler just called an all-hands meeting. Said you decided to step back for personal reasons. People aren't buying it. An unknown number. Mr. Pierce, this is Natalie Corwin from the Hillcrest Business Journal. I'd love to speak with you about the recent leadership changes at Summit Freight. Please call me at your earliest convenience. I set the phone down. The press. Of course. Harold would hate that. He'd spent years carefully crafting Summit's image as a family business built on trust and hard work. If word got out that he fired the guy who actually built the company to install his unqualified son, it would be a PR nightmare. Part of me wanted to call that reporter back immediately. Burn it all down. Let the world know what kind of man Harold Brennan really was. But I didn't. Not yet. I stood and walked to the closet in my bedroom, the one I rarely opened because I didn't have much worth storing. I pulled out a cardboard file box from the top shelf. It was heavier than I remembered. I carried it back to the living room, set it on the coffee table, and opened it. Inside were 8 years of my life at Summit. Not the official files. Those were on company servers that Tyler probably had access to now. These were my copies, my insurance. Contracts I'd negotiated personally, with notes in the margins showing where I'd saved Summit thousands of dollars. Emails from clients praising my work, some of them saying outright that they only did business with Summit because of me. Performance reviews from Harold, glowing reports from the first 5 years before he started getting vague and distant. Financial projections I drafted that turned out to be accurate within 2%. Photos from company events where I was front and center, shaking hands with clients, cutting ribbons at new facilities, standing beside Harold like we were partners. And then, buried at the bottom, a folder I'd labeled Insurance Policy. Inside were documents I'd gathered over the past 2 years. Not because I was paranoid, because I was smart. Copies of invoices that didn't match payments. Emails where Harold instructed me to classify personal expenses as business costs. A memo from 18 months ago where Harold asked me to backdate a contract to make a deal look better for a potential investor. I'd refused. He'd been furious. But I'd kept the email. There was more. Screenshots of text messages where Harold discussed bringing Tyler into the company, long before he ever mentioned it to me. Messages where he talked about phasing Damien out and making room for family. Messages that proved this wasn't a sudden decision, it was a calculated betrayal. I'd kept all of it, not because I wanted to use it, because I knew, deep down, that loyalty wouldn't protect me. Only evidence would. I pulled out my laptop and started organizing everything into a single encrypted file. If Harold wanted to fight, I'd give him a war. But I'd fight smart, methodically, with facts. As I worked, my phone rang. This time it was a number I recognized. Mitchell Rhodes, one of Summit's biggest clients. He ran a regional retail chain with 18 locations, and I'd personally managed his logistics for 6 years. I answered. Mitchell. Damien, what the hell is going on over there? His voice was sharp, concerned. I just got a call from some kid named Tyler saying he's my new point of contact. I told him I don't work with anyone but you. I exhaled slowly. It's complicated. Uncomplicated. Are you still with Summit or not? Not exactly. Then I'm pulling my contract. Mitchell, wait. I'm serious, Damien. I don't care about Harold or his kid. I care about results. You've saved me hundreds of thousands of dollars over the years. You've never missed a deadline. You've never lied to me. That's worth more than a company name. His words hit me harder than I expected. I appreciate that, Mitchell. But you don't have to make any decisions right now. I already did, he said. I'm sending a termination notice to Summit today. 60-day clause. And when you land somewhere new, you call me first. I'll follow you wherever you go. After we hung up, I sat back on the couch, staring at the phone. Mitchell wasn't the only client who felt that way. I knew at least a dozen others who'd worked with me personally, who trusted me, who'd probably pull their contracts if they knew I was gone. That's when it hit me. Harold didn't just fire me. He'd fired the foundation of his business. I opened my laptop again, this time, pulling up a blank document. I started drafting something I'd thought about for years but never had the guts to pursue. My own company. I didn't have Harold's money. I didn't have investors or a fancy office or a son with an MBA. But I had something more valuable. I had relationships, I had reputation. I had 8 years of expertise and a client base that trusted me more than they trusted Summit. I could build something new, something better, something that couldn't be taken away from me. By the time the sun set, I had a rough business plan sketched out. A lean logistics operation focused on mid-sized clients who valued reliability over flash. No venture capital. No board of directors. Just me and a small team of people I trusted. I'd call it Apex Freight Solutions. It wasn't about revenge. It was about survival. About proving that I didn't need Harold Brennan to succeed. That I never did. My phone buzzed again. This time it was Bryce Chambers. "Good news," he said. "I filed the arbitration paperwork an hour ago. Harold's attorney already called me. She's pissed." I smiled for the first time all day. Good. She wants to meet, discuss a settlement. No settlements. That's what I told her. She said Harold's willing to negotiate, that he doesn't want this to get messy. "It's already messy," I said. He made sure of that when he put his son in my chair. Agreed. So here's the plan. We proceed with arbitration. We request the financial audit, and we let Harold sweat for a while. The longer this drags out, the more nervous he gets, and nervous people make mistakes. "What kind of mistakes?" Bryce chuckled. "The kind that win us this case. Sit tight, Damien. This is just getting started." After I hung up, I stood and walked to the window. The city lights were starting to flicker on across the skyline. Somewhere out there, Harold and Tyler were probably panicking, scrambling, trying to figure out how to silence me. But they couldn't. Because I'd spent 8 years learning from Harold Brennan. And the most important lesson he ever taught me was this: never go into a fight unless you've already won. I'd already won. They just didn't know it yet. The arbitration notice hit Summit Freight Solutions like a bomb 3 days later. I knew because Garrett Flynn called me at 7 in the morning, his voice a mix of shock and admiration. "Damien, Harold's losing his mind." He threw a stapler at the wall during the executive meeting. An actual stapler. I was sitting in a corner booth at Sterling's Diner, the same place where Harold and I had drafted our original partnership agreement 8 years ago. The irony wasn't lost on me. "What's he saying?" I asked, taking a sip of coffee. "That you're trying to destroy the company. That you're being vindictive. That this is all about ego." Garrett paused. "But between you and me, people aren't buying it. The younger staff, the ones you trained, they're asking questions. They want to know why you're really gone." "And what's Tyler saying?" Garrett snorted. "Tyler's trying to act like everything's under control, but he's in over his head. He tried to renegotiate the Westport contract yesterday without understanding the volume commitments. Almost lost us the account. I had to step in and fix it." That didn't surprise me. Tyler had an MBA, but he'd never actually run logistics. He didn't understand the difference between theory and practice, between PowerPoint slides and real-world problem-solving. "Listen," Garrett said, lowering his voice. "I'm not supposed to tell you this, but Harold's been meeting with forensic accountants. He knows about the audit request. He's trying to clean things up before anyone official looks at the books." My jaw tightened. "What kind of things?" "I don't know specifics. But I've seen him in his office late at night, going through old files. Shredding documents. He's panicking, Damien." "Good. Let him panic." After I hung up with Garrett, I opened my laptop and pulled up the spreadsheet I'd been building for the past week. It was a comprehensive list of every client relationship I'd personally developed at Summit. Names, contact information, contract renewal dates, pain points, and most importantly, whether they'd be willing to follow me to a new company. The list was longer than I expected. 43 clients. 18 of them had already reached out to me directly after hearing rumors about my departure. 10 more had expressed frustration with Tyler's attempts to take over their accounts. I wasn't trying to sabotage Summit. But I wasn't going to pretend that my relationships didn't matter. These clients trusted me. They'd built their supply chains around my expertise. If Harold thought he could just swap me out for his unqualified son and everything would stay the same, he was delusional. My phone buzzed. Text from Bryce Chambers. "Meeting with Harold's attorney at 2 p.m. You should be there." I texted back. "On my way." The meeting took place at a neutral law office downtown. A sterile conference room with gray walls and a table that looked like it had hosted 1,000 settlement negotiations. Harold's attorney, A woman named Patricia Vance sat on one side with a paralegal. Bryce and I sat on the other. Patricia was in her 60s, sharp-eyed, with the kind of confidence that came from winning more cases than she'd lost. She opened a leather portfolio and got straight to business. "Mr. Pierce, my client is willing to make you a very generous offer to resolve this matter quickly and quietly." I didn't say anything, just waited. "Summit Freight Solutions is prepared to offer you a full year of severance at your current salary, continuation of health benefits for 18 months, and a non-compete waiver that would allow you to work in the industry without restriction." Bryce raised an eyebrow. "That's a significant offer." "It is," Patricia agreed, "but it comes with conditions. Mr. Pierce would need to sign a comprehensive release of all claims, including any allegations related to the partnership agreement. He would also need to agree to a mutual non-disparagement clause and confidentiality regarding the terms of his departure." I leaned back in my chair. "So, you want to pay me to go away and never talk about what happened?" "We want to resolve this amicably," Patricia said. "Litigation is expensive and time-consuming for everyone involved. This offer allows both parties to move forward." "What about the partnership agreement?" I asked. Patricia's expression didn't change. "My client disputes the validity of that document. However, in the interest of avoiding prolonged legal battles, we're willing to treat this as a standard employment separation." "Disputes the validity," I repeated. "On what grounds?" "The document was created under duress during a period of financial crisis. It lacks certain legal formalities. And most importantly, it was superseded by subsequent corporate restructuring that Mr. Pierce participated in and benefited from." Bryce leaned forward. "That's creative legal theory, but it won't hold up. The partnership agreement was notarized, filed, and has never been formally dissolved. Your client can dispute it all he wants, but a judge will enforce it." Patricia smiled thinly. "Perhaps. Or perhaps the court will find that Mr. Pierce has been adequately compensated over the years and that his claims are speculative at best. Either way, we're offering a clean exit. I'd advise your client to take it." I looked at Bryce. He gave me a slight nod, letting me know it was my call. "Tell Harold I'm not interested," I said. Patricia's smile faded. "Mr. Pierce, I don't think you understand the position you're in. Summit Freight Solutions has significant legal resources. We can drag this arbitration out for years. We can tie up every asset, every claim, every piece of evidence in procedural motions. By the time this is resolved, you'll have spent more on legal fees than you'll ever recover." "Maybe," I said, "but Harold will have spent even more. And while we're fighting, his clients will be leaving. His reputation will be damaged. And everyone in the industry will know that he fired the guy who built his company to install his incompetent son." Patricia's jaw tightened. "That's defamatory." "It's true," I said. "And truth is an absolute defense." Bryce stood. "I think we're done here. Proceed with the arbitration. We'll see you in court." As we walked out, Patricia called after us. "You're making a mistake, Mr. Pierce. Harold's not going to back down." I turned back. "Neither am I." Outside, Bryce clapped me on the shoulder. "That was gutsy. But you know she's right about one thing. This is going to get expensive." "I know," I said. "But I'm not doing this for the money. I'm doing it because Harold needs to learn that he can't just throw people away when they're no longer convenient." Bryce nodded. "All right, then let's give him a lesson he won't forget." That evening, I met with 3 of my former colleagues at a quiet bar on the outskirts of town. Allison Hughes was there, along with 2 senior operations managers, Kevin Torres and Rachel Nguyen. All 3 had worked under me for years, and all 3 were furious about what Harold had done. "Tyler fired Marcus today," Rachel said, her voice tight with anger. "Gave him 10 minutes to clear out his desk. Said he was organizing the operations team. Marcus has been with Summit for 12 years. I shook my head. "Tyler's trying to consolidate power. He's getting rid of anyone who might question him." "It's worse than that," Kevin said. "He's making decisions without consulting anyone. Yesterday he approved a routing change that's going to cost us an extra $15,000 a month in fuel. When I tried to explain why it was a bad idea, he told me to trust the process." "What process?" Allison asked. "He doesn't have a process. He has an ego and his father's name." I took a drink, letting their frustration settle. Then I said what I'd been thinking about for days. I'm starting my own company. The three of them looked at me. It's called Apex Freight Solutions. I continued. Small, lean, focused on clients who value relationships over corporate structures. I'm not trying to compete with Summit directly. I'm trying to build something better. Rachel leaned forward. Are you asking us to join you? I'm saying that if you're interested, there's a place for you. I can't match your current salaries right away, but I can offer equity. Real equity, not promises. Kevin and Rachel exchanged glances. Allison was already nodding. I'm in, she said. I've been looking for an excuse to leave ever since Harold pulled this stunt. Me too, Rachel said. Tyler's going to run Summit into the ground. I'd rather build something new than watch him destroy what we worked for. Kevin hesitated, then extended his hand. Count me in. I shook each of their hands, feeling something I hadn't felt in weeks. Hope. We spent the next 2 hours planning. Allison would handle client relations. Rachel would manage operations. Kevin would oversee logistics and routing. I'd handle strategy and business development. We'd start small, maybe 10 clients, and grow organically. It wasn't going to be easy. We'd be starting from scratch, competing against a company that had resources, infrastructure, and name recognition. But we had something Summit didn't. We had loyalty. We had integrity. And we had each other. As I drove home that night, my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Damian Pierce? The voice was unfamiliar. Male, professional. Speaking. My name is Jordan Wells. I'm the managing director at Clearview Capital. We're a private equity firm that's been watching Summit Freight Solutions for the past year. We were considering an investment, but recent developments have made us reconsider. I pulled over to the side of the road. What kind of developments? Leadership instability, client attrition, reputation damage. Our analysts tell us that you were the operational backbone of that company. Without you, Summit's value proposition is significantly diminished. I appreciate the vote of confidence, I said carefully. But I'm not with Summit anymore. I know, Jordan said. That's why I'm calling. We'd like to talk to you about your new venture. If you're building something, we'd like to hear about it. My heart started racing. You want to invest in Apex? Potentially. We invest in people, not just companies. And from what we've seen, you're someone worth investing in. Are you available to meet? I smiled. Absolutely. After we hung up, I sat in my car for a long moment, staring at the dashboard. Harold had fired me thinking he was cutting dead weight. Instead, he'd set me free. And now, I was going to show him what a mistake that was. The meeting with Clearview Capital happened 2 days later in a sleek high-rise office with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Jordan Wells was exactly what I expected. Mid-40s, expensive suit, the kind of handshake that communicated both confidence and calculation. He introduced me to his team, 2 analysts who looked fresh out of business school, and a senior partner named Diane Rothman, a woman with silver hair and the sharp gaze of someone who didn't suffer fools. I presented my business plan for Apex Freight Solutions. Lean operations, client-focused service, technology-driven efficiency, no corporate bloat, no nepotism, just results. Jordan listened intently, occasionally jotting notes. When I finished, Diane leaned forward. Impressive. But let's talk about the elephant in the room. You're in the middle of a legal battle with your former employer. That's a risk factor for us. It's a short-term complication, I said. But it's not going to affect Apex. The partnership agreement I have with Harold protects my intellectual property and client relationships. Once arbitration is complete, Summit will have no legal claim to anything I build going forward. And if you lose? Diane asked. I won't, I said. The documentation is airtight. Harold signed it himself. Jordan exchanged a glance with Diane. Then he said, We'd like to offer you seed funding. $500,000 to start, with the option for additional rounds based on performance. In exchange, we'd take a 20% equity stake and a seat on your advisory board. I kept my expression neutral, but inside I was celebrating. $500,000 would be enough to rent office space, hire staff, and acquire the equipment I needed to launch. It was more than I'd hoped for. I accept, I said. We shook hands, and Jordan smiled. "Welcome to the Clearview portfolio, Damien. Let's build something great." As I left the building, I felt lighter than I had in months. Everything was coming together. I had funding. I had a team. I had clients ready to follow me. Harold had tried to destroy me, and instead, he'd given me the push I needed to create something better. But that feeling didn't last long. That evening, I was working in my apartment, drafting contracts and timelines, when my phone rang. It was Garrett Flynn, and his voice was shaking. "Damien, we need to talk. In person. Now." "What's wrong?" "One. Not over the phone. Meet me at the parking garage on 5th Street, top level, 20 minutes. He hung up before I could ask anything else. I grabbed my jacket and drove to the garage, my mind racing. Garrett wasn't the type to be dramatic. If he was this spooked, something serious had happened. I found him on the top level, leaning against his car, arms crossed, looking like he hadn't slept in days. "What's going on?" I asked. Garrett looked around, making sure we were alone. Then he pulled out his phone and handed it to me. "I found this on Harold's computer." I wasn't snooping. He asked me to pull some financial reports, and I saw a folder labeled Tyler Transition Plan. I opened it. I looked at the phone. On the screen was an email thread between Harold and Patricia Vance, his attorney. The subject line read, "Contingency Strategy Re, Pierce." I scrolled through the messages, my stomach sinking with every line. The emails detailed Harold's plan to remove me from Summit. But it wasn't just about bringing Tyler in, it was about erasing me completely. Harold had been planning this for over a year. He'd intentionally excluded me from key meetings. He'd rerouted client communications so they went through him instead of me. He'd even started spreading subtle rumors to the board that I was burning out and losing focus. But the worst part was buried halfway. Through the thread, Patricia had written, "If Pierce challenges the termination, we'll need to discredit him professionally. I recommend we prepare documentation, suggesting performance issues, potential misconduct, or ethical violations. It doesn't need to be true. It just needs to create reasonable doubt." Harold's response, "Do whatever it takes. Tyler needs a clean slate, and I can't have Damien hovering over this company like a ghost." I felt like I'd been punched in the chest. "They were going to frame me," I said quietly. Garrett nodded. "There's more. Keep scrolling." I scrolled down and found another message, this one from Harold to Tyler. "Once we're clear of Damien, we'll restructure the client contracts under your name. The non-compete clause in his severance will prevent him from working with any of them for 2 years. By the time that expires, they'll have forgotten about him." I read it twice, making sure I understood. Harold wasn't just firing me. He was trying to bury me. To make sure I couldn't rebuild. To trap me in a legal cage while he and Tyler profited from everything I'd built. "There's one more thing," Garrett said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I found financial records. Harold's been siphoning money from the company for the past 18 months. Over $2 million. He's been hiding it in offshore accounts." I looked up. $2 million? "He's been preparing for this, Damien. He knew you'd fight back, so he's been moving assets where you can't touch them. If the company goes under during arbitration, he'll still walk away rich." I handed the phone back to Garrett, my hands shaking with rage. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because it's wrong," Garrett said. "I've worked for Harold for 10 years. I respected him. But this is fraud. This is criminal. And I'm not going to be part of it." I took a deep breath, trying to process everything. Harold hadn't just betrayed me. He'd planned it, methodically, ruthlessly. He'd turned our partnership into a weapon and aimed it directly at my future. "Can you get me copies of those files?" I asked. Garrett hesitated. "If Harold finds out I gave them to you, I'm done. He'll destroy me." "He's going to destroy you anyway," I said. "Once Tyler's settled in, Harold's going to start cleaning house. You're loyal to me, which makes you a liability." Garrett stared at me for a long moment. Then he nodded. "I'll get you the files. But you have to promise me something." "What?" "When this is over, when you've beaten him, you give me a job at Apex. I don't care what the title is. I just want to work for someone I can trust again." I extended my hand. "Deal." We shook, and Garrett pulled a flash drive from his pocket. "I already made copies. Everything's on here. Financial records, emails, the transition plan, all of it. I took the drive, feeling its weight in my palm. This was it. The evidence I needed to not just win the arbitration, but to destroy Harold's credibility completely. "Thank you," I said. Garrett nodded. "Just make sure it counts." As I drove home, my mind was racing. I thought this was about ego, about Harold choosing his son over me. But it was bigger than that. Harold had been planning to erase me, to steal my work, and to profit from my downfall. He'd underestimated me once. He wouldn't get the chance to do it again. Back at my apartment, I plugged the flash drive into my laptop and started going through the files. It was worse than Garrett had described. Harold hadn't just siphoned $2 million. He'd been committing tax fraud, misrepresenting company earnings to investors, and falsifying documents to inflate Summit's valuation. If this went public, it wouldn't just destroy Harold's reputation. It would destroy Summit entirely. I sat back, staring at the screen. I had two choices. I could use this information to bury Harold and take everything from him. Or I could use it strategically, to protect myself and my future, without obliterating the company that dozens of innocent employees depended on. It wasn't an easy decision. Harold deserved to lose everything. But the people who worked at Summit, the ones who had nothing to do with his scheming, they didn't deserve to suffer. I picked up my phone and called Bryce Chambers. "I need to see you first thing tomorrow morning," I said. "And bring a forensic accountant. We just found the smoking gun." Bryce Chambers arrived at my apartment at 8 the next morning with a woman named Dr. Sandra Liu, a forensic accountant who specialized in corporate fraud cases. She had the quiet intensity of someone who saw numbers the way detectives saw crime scenes. Every digit telling a story, every discrepancy a potential smoking gun. I handed her the flash drive Garrett had given me and watched as she plugged it into her laptop. Her expression remained neutral as she opened the first file, but I could see her eyes moving rapidly across the screen, processing information at a speed that would have taken me hours. "This is substantial," she said after about 10 minutes. "How did you obtain this?" "A source inside the company," I said. "Someone who still has access to the financial systems." Sandra looked at Bryce. "If this goes to court, chain of custody could be an issue." "We're not in court yet," Bryce said. "Right now, we're just gathering intelligence. If what's on that drive is what Damien says it is, we'll have plenty of legal avenues to compel official discovery." Sandra nodded and continued working. I made coffee while she analyzed the files, the apartment filling with the sound of keyboard clicks and occasional murmurs as she flagged items of interest. Bryce sat across from her, taking notes on a legal pad, his expression growing darker with each passing minute. After nearly 2 hours, Sandra leaned back and removed her glasses. "Harold Brennan has been systematically defrauding Summit Freight Solutions for at least 18 months, possibly longer. The evidence here shows multiple instances of embezzlement, tax evasion, and securities fraud." She turned her laptop toward us, showing a spreadsheet with highlighted rows. "He's been creating fake vendor accounts and routing company funds into them. The money then gets transferred through a series of shell companies before landing in offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands. Based on what I'm seeing, he's moved approximately $2.3 million. I felt my jaw clench. $2.3 million. "That's conservative," Sandra continued. "There are additional transactions that I'd need access to bank records to verify, but the pattern is clear. He's been preparing for something. Either he was planning to sell the company, or he was anticipating a legal challenge and wanted to secure assets beyond reach." Bryce tapped his pen against the pad. "This changes everything. We're not just talking about wrongful termination anymore. This is criminal." "Can we use this in arbitration?" I asked. "Absolutely," Bryce said. "And more importantly, we can report this to the SEC and the IRS. If Harold's been falsifying tax documents and misrepresenting earnings to investors, he's looking at serious federal charges." Sandra pulled up another document. "There's something else you should see. This is an email exchange between Harold and Tyler from 3 months ago. They're discussing how to restructure the company ownership after you're removed." She scrolled down to a specific message. Tyler had written, "Once Damien's out, we need to make sure the clients see me as the continuity, not him. Can we send out a memo saying he retired or something?" Harold's response made my blood boil. "Better idea. We say he had performance issues and we had to let him go. Plant the seed that he was the problem, not the solution. By the time anyone asks questions, we'll have the narrative locked down. They were planning to destroy your reputation, Sandra said quietly. Not just remove you, but make sure you couldn't recover professionally. I stood and walked to the window, trying to control the anger coursing through me. For 8 years, I'd given Harold everything. I'd sacrificed relationships, health, and personal time to build his company. And this was how he repaid me. With calculated betrayal and character assassination. What's our move? I asked, not turning around. Bryce stood and joined me at the window. We have options. We can take this straight to the authorities and let them handle it. Harold would face criminal charges, likely jail time. Summit would probably collapse under the scandal. Or, I prompted, or we use it as leverage. We go to Harold privately, show him what we have, and force him to settle on our terms. He signs over your equity stake, admits wrongdoing in the arbitration, and agrees to stay out of your way. In exchange, we don't destroy him. I thought about the employees at Summit. Allison, Kevin, and Rachel had already agreed to join me at Apex, but there were dozens of others who had nothing to do with Harold's schemes. Drivers who depended on steady work. Dispatchers who had families to feed. If Summit collapsed, they'd all suffer. There's a third option, Sandra said. We document everything, report it to the board of directors, and force them to remove Harold. Tyler too, if he was complicit. The company survives, but under new leadership. The board's in Harold's pocket, I said. He handpicked most of them. Not all of them, Bryce countered. What about the investors? Clearview Capital was looking at Summit before they came to you. If they find out about this fraud, they'll pull out. Other investors will too. Harold's reputation in this industry will be finished. I turned back to face them. I want to talk to Garrett first. He risked everything to get me this information. He deserves to know what we're planning. Bryce nodded. Fair enough. But we need to move fast. If Harold suspects that we have this evidence, he'll start covering his tracks. I called Garrett and asked him to meet me at a coffee shop downtown, somewhere public but not too crowded. He arrived 20 minutes later, looking exhausted and paranoid, constantly glancing over his shoulder. Are you okay? I asked as he sat down. I haven't slept, he admitted. I keep expecting Harold to burst into my office and accuse me of stealing files. Every email I get, every phone call. I think it's over. It's going to be okay, I said. But I need to ask you something. How deep is Tyler in this? Garrett ran a hand through his hair. Deep. He knows about the offshore accounts. He helped set up some of the shell companies. Harold's been grooming him for months, teaching him how to hide money and manipulate records. So he's not just an entitled son who got handed a job, I said. He's an accomplice. Exactly. And he's arrogant about it. Last week, I heard him telling someone on the phone that once you were gone, they'd have complete control of the company. He sees this as his inheritance, and he doesn't care who gets hurt along the way. I leaned forward. Garrett, what I'm about to tell you stays between us. We have evidence of everything. The embezzlement, the fraud, the plan to destroy my reputation, all of it. His eyes widened. How much evidence? Enough to put Harold in prison. Maybe Tyler too. Garrett sat back, processing this. What are you going to do? That depends, I said. I can destroy them both. Report everything to the SEC, the IRS, let the authorities handle it. Harold loses everything. Summit probably collapses. Or I can use it as leverage, force a settlement, and walk away clean. What about the employees? Garrett asked. What about the people who had nothing to do with this? That's what I'm trying to figure out. I admitted. I don't want to hurt innocent people. But I also can't let Harold get away with what he did. Garrett was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, There's another way. What if we force Harold to sell? Not to you, but to someone who'll actually run the company properly. Someone who'll keep the employees safe. I hadn't considered that. Who would buy it? Clearview Capital. Garrett said. They were already interested. If we present them with a clean acquisition, post-Harold, they might jump at it. Summit's infrastructure is solid. The client base is strong. The only problem is leadership. It was a smart idea. Clearview could buy Summit, install professional management, and preserve jobs. Harold would be forced out, but the company would survive. I'll talk to Jordan Wells, I said. See if he's interested. Garrett nodded, then hesitated. Damien, there's something else. Something I didn't put on the flash drive because I wasn't sure if it mattered. What is it? Harold's in debt. Serious debt. He's got 3 mortgages on his house, maxed out credit lines, and he owes money to some private lenders that aren't exactly reputable. I frowned. How is that possible? Summit's been profitable for years. That's just it, Garrett said. He's been spending company money like it's his personal account. The vacation home in Asheville? Company expense, classified as a corporate retreat center. Tyler's car, company lease. Even his country club membership is being paid by Summit. And now he's broke, I said, understanding. That's why he's been embezzling. He's trying to cover his lifestyle. Garrett nodded. If you expose him, he doesn't just lose his job. He loses everything. I thought about that for a moment. Part of me wanted Harold to lose everything. He tried to do the same to me. But another part, the part that remembered the man who'd given me a chance 8 years ago, felt something close to pity. That man was gone, though, replaced by someone consumed by greed and entitlement. Set up a meeting, I said to Garrett. Tell Harold I want to talk, face to face. Just him and me. Are you sure that's a good idea? Probably not, I admitted. But he needs to hear what I have to say, and I need to look him in the eye when I tell him it's over. Garrett agreed to arrange it. As we parted ways, he grabbed my arm. Be careful, he said. Harold's desperate, and desperate people do dangerous things. That evening, I met with Jordan Wells at his office. I laid out the situation without mentioning the criminal evidence. I told him that Summit was facing leadership challenges, that Harold might be open to selling, and that it could be an opportunity for Clearview to acquire a profitable logistics company at a discount. Jordan listened carefully, his expression unreadable. What's the catch? He asked. The catch is that it needs to happen fast, I said. And it needs to be clean. No drawn-out negotiations. You make an offer. Harold accepts. And we move forward. Why would Harold sell? Jordan asked. From what I understand, he views Summit as his legacy. Let's just say he's going to be motivated, I said. Jordan studied me for a moment, then smiled. I like the way you think, Damien. Send me the financials. If the numbers work, we'll make an offer. As I left Clearview's office, my phone buzzed. Text from Garrett. Meeting set for tomorrow. 6 p.m. Harold's office. He doesn't know what it's about, but he agreed to see you. I texted back. Perfect. Tomorrow, I'd confront Harold Brennan. And one way or another, this would end. I arrived at Summit Freight Solutions at exactly 6 o'clock the next evening. The parking lot was nearly empty. Just a few cars scattered across the asphalt. Harold's black Mercedes was parked in his reserved spot near the entrance, gleaming under the security lights. I sat in my car for a moment, gathering my thoughts. This was it. The moment I'd been building toward for weeks. I had the evidence. I had the leverage. I had the power to destroy Harold Brennan completely. But I also had a choice about how to use that power. I grabbed my briefcase and walked into the building. The lobby was dark, except for the emergency lighting. My footsteps echoed on the tile floor as I made my way to the elevator. When I reached Harold's office on the 3rd floor, I found the door partially open. Harold was sitting behind his desk. The same massive oak desk he'd bought 3 years ago when we'd signed our biggest client. He looked older than I remembered, tired. The confidence that usually radiated from him seemed dimmed, replaced by something that looked like wariness. Damien, he said, gesturing to the chair across from him. Come in. Sit down. Sayin. I closed the door behind me and sat. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The silence was heavy, filled with 8 years of history, loyalty, and now betrayal. Garrett said you wanted to talk, Harold finally said. I'll admit, I was surprised. I thought after the arbitration filing, we were past talking. We need to talk, I said. Because what happens next depends on this conversation. Harold leaned back in his chair, trying to look relaxed, but I could see the tension in his shoulders. All right, I'm listening. I opened my briefcase and pulled out a folder. Inside were printouts of the financial records, the emails, the offshore account transfers. Everything. I placed it on the desk between us. I know everything, Harold. The embezzlement, the shell companies, the $2.3 million you've hidden in the Cayman Islands. I know about the plan to destroy my reputation. I know about Tyler's involvement. I know it all. Harold's face went pale. He reached for the folder with a shaking hand and opened it. As he flipped through the pages, I watched the color drain from his face completely. "Where did you get this?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "That doesn't matter. What matters is what I do with it." Harold closed the folder and looked up at me. For the first time since I'd known him, I saw fear in his eyes. Real, genuine fear. "What do you want?" he asked. "I want the truth," I said. "Why? Why did you do this? I gave you 8 years of my life. I saved your company. I made you millions. And you repaid me by trying to erase me." Harold was quiet for a long moment. Then he stood and walked to the window, staring out at the parking lot below. "You want the truth?" he said, his back to me. "The truth is, I was scared." "Scared of what?" "Of becoming irrelevant." He turned to face me. "You were so good at what you did, Damien. Too good. Every client loved you. Every employee respected you. The board started asking why they needed me when you were running everything. So you fired me because I was competent?" "I fired you because Tyler needed a chance," Harold said. "He's my son, my legacy. And he was never going to have that chance as long as you were here, casting a shadow over everything." "Tyler's incompetent," I said bluntly. "He doesn't understand logistics. He doesn't understand this business. You didn't give him a chance. You gave him a participation trophy." Harold's jaw tightened. "He'll learn. He just needs time." "Time?" I laughed bitterly. "Harold, he's already destroying what we built. Clients are leaving. Employees are quitting. In 3 months, Tyler has undone half of what took us 8 years to create." "That's not true." "It is true," I interrupted. "And you know it. But you're so desperate to hand him a kingdom that you're willing to burn it down rather than admit he's not ready." Harold slumped back into his chair, suddenly looking every one of his 63 years. "What are you going to do with that evidence?" "I have options," I said. "I can take it to the SEC, to the IRS, to the state attorney general. You'd be arrested within a week. You'd lose everything. Your company, your house, your reputation. Tyler would probably face charges too." Harold's hands were trembling now. "Please, Damien, please. I made mistakes. I know that. But don't destroy my son. Whatever you do to me, leave Tyler out of it." "Tyler participated," I said. "He knew about the offshore accounts. He helped set up the shell companies. He's not innocent in this." "He was following my lead," Harold said desperately. "He's young. He made bad choices because I taught him to. If you want to punish someone, punish me. But give Tyler a chance to walk away clean." I studied Harold for a moment, this man I'd once admired, now reduced to begging for mercy. "I'm not interested in punishment," I said. "I'm interested in justice. And justice means making this right." "How?" Harold asked. "Tell me what you want, and I'll do it." I pulled out a second document from my briefcase and placed it on the desk. It was a sale agreement, drafted by Bryce Chambers, outlining the terms for Summit's acquisition by Clearview Capital. "You're going to sell Summit," I said. "To Clearview. They'll pay you a fair price, enough to cover your debts and give you a clean exit. In exchange, you step down immediately. Tyler steps down, and you both agree to never work in logistics again." Harold picked up the document, reading through it with wide eyes. "This is insane. Summit is my life's work. I can't just sell it." "You don't have a choice," I said. "If you don't sign this, I take the evidence to the authorities. You go to prison. Summit collapses. Everyone loses. And if I do sign, then the employees keep their jobs, the clients stay serviced, and you get to walk away with your freedom and enough money to retire comfortably. It's more than you deserve." Harold set the document down and looked at me with something that might have been respect. "You've thought of everything. I learned from you," I said. "You taught me to always have a backup plan, to protect myself, to document everything. I was a good student." He almost smiled at that. "Almost. What about you?" he asked. "What do you get out of this?" "I get my life back," I said. I get to build Apex without you hovering over me. I get justice without destruction. And I get the satisfaction of knowing that I beat you at your own game. Harold picked up a pen, staring at the sale agreement. His hand hovered over the signature line for what felt like an eternity. Then, finally, he signed. Tyler's not going to accept this, he said quietly. Tyler doesn't have a choice either, I said. If he fights, the evidence goes public. He can walk away now, or he can face federal charges. His call. I took the signed agreement and stood. As I reached the door, Harold called after me. Damien. I turned. For what it's worth, he said, his voice cracking, I am sorry. I should have trusted you. I should have been honest. I should have treated you like the partner you were. I looked at him for a long moment, this broken man who'd once seemed invincible. You're right, I said. You should have. Then I walked out, leaving Harold Brennan sitting alone in his office, surrounded by the ruins of the empire we'd built together. As I rode the elevator down, I felt no triumph, no satisfaction, just a quiet sense of closure. This chapter of my life was over. Harold was finished. Tyler was done. And I was free. I stepped out into the parking lot, the cool evening air washing over me. My phone buzzed. Text from Bryce. Did he sign? I texted back. He signed. Another text, this time from Allison. How did it go? I typed out a response. It's over. We won. But, as I drove away from Summit Freight Solutions for what would probably be the last time, I realized that winning didn't feel the way I'd expected. There was no rush of victory, no sense of revenge fulfilled. Instead, there was just relief, and the knowledge that sometimes, the hardest battles aren't won with destruction, but with the discipline to show mercy when you have the power to do otherwise. I'd beaten Harold Brennan, not by destroying him, but by being better than him. And that, I realized, was the only victory that actually mattered. Tomorrow, Clearview Capital would finalize the acquisition. Summit would get new leadership. The employees would keep their jobs. And I would focus on building Apex into something Harold could never take away from me. Not because I'd hidden it or protected it with legal clauses, but because I'd built it with integrity, with loyalty, with the kind of values that couldn't be bought, sold, or stolen. Harold had tried to teach me that business was about winning at any cost. But in the end, I'd learned a different lesson. Business was about building something worth keeping. Something that would last, not because it was protected by contracts, but because it was founded on trust. And that was something Harold Brennan would never understand. The acquisition moved faster than I expected. Within 48 hours of Harold signing the agreement, Clearview Capital's legal team descended on Summit Freight Solutions like a surgical strike force. They brought accountants, auditors, HR consultants, and transition specialists. Every file was reviewed, every contract examined, every employee interviewed. I wasn't directly involved in the process, but Jordan Wells kept me updated. He called me 3 days after the deal was signed, his voice carrying a mix of satisfaction and disbelief. You weren't exaggerating about the financial irregularities, he said. Our team found another 700,000 in questionable transactions that weren't even on your flash drive. Harold's been treating Summit like his personal piggy bank for years. Is the deal still going through? I asked. Absolutely. If anything, it makes the acquisition more valuable. We're getting the company at a discount because of the leadership problems. Once we clean house and install proper management, Summit's worth will increase substantially. What about the employees? That's actually why I'm calling, Jordan said. We're planning to retain most of the staff. The operational people, the drivers, the dispatchers, they're all solid. It's just the executive level that needs restructuring. And Harold? He's out. Effective immediately. We're giving him 30 days to clear his personal items and transfer knowledge, but he's no longer making decisions. Tyler's already gone. He cleaned out his desk yesterday and left without saying goodbye to anyone. I felt a strange mix of emotions at that news. Tyler had been complicit in his father's schemes, but he was also a young man who'd been corrupted by poor mentorship. Part of me hoped he'd learn from this. The other part doubted he would. There's one more thing, Jordan continued. We'd like you to consult on the transition. Not as an employee of Summit, but as an advisor to Clearview. We need someone who understands the operational side, who knows the clients, who can help us avoid disruption during the changeover. I'm focusing on Apex, I said carefully. I know. And we're not asking you to abandon that. This would be short-term, maybe 6 weeks, just to ensure continuity. We'd pay you a consulting fee, and it would give you a chance to say goodbye to the company you built properly. I thought about it. Going back to Summit, even temporarily, felt strange. But Jordan was right. I'd spent 8 years building relationships with those clients, training those employees. I owed it to them to make sure the transition was smooth. All right, I said. 6 weeks. But I'm not working out of Harold's old office. Jordan laughed. Deal. We're converting that into a conference room anyway. The first day back at Summit was surreal. I walked through the lobby, past the reception desk where I'd greeted visitors hundreds of times, and rode the elevator to the 3rd floor. But instead of the tense, political atmosphere that had defined the place under Harold's leadership, there was something different in the air. Hope, maybe, or relief. Allison met me at the elevator with 2 cups of coffee and a smile. Welcome back, she said, handing me one. It's weird seeing you here as a visitor. It's weird being here as a visitor, I admitted. She walked with me through the office. People looked up from their desks, some waving, others offering tentative smiles. A few approached to shake my hand and thank me for whatever role I'd played in saving their jobs. They know Harold's gone, Allison said quietly. Word spread fast. And they know you had something to do with it. I didn't do anything, I said. I just made sure the right people knew what was happening. That's more than nothing, she said. We spent the morning reviewing client accounts and identifying potential concerns. Clearview's transition team had prepared a communication strategy, but they wanted my input on which clients needed personal attention and which ones would be fine with a standard announcement. Mitchell Rhodes was at the top of my list. I called him personally. Damien. He answered on the first ring. I heard rumors. Is it true? Harold's out? It's true, I confirmed. Summit's been acquired by Clearview Capital. New management, new direction. But the operational team is staying intact. And you? Are you coming back? Are you coming back? No, I said. I'm consulting for a few weeks to help with the transition, but my focus is on Apex. We're launching next month. Mitchell was quiet for a moment. Then I'm pulling my contract with Summit. 60-day notice. And when Apex is operational, I want to be your first client. Mitchell, you don't have to do that. Clearview's bringing in good people. I'm sure they are, he said. But I don't work with companies, Damien. I work with people I trust. And I trust you. By the end of the week, 4 more clients had followed Mitchell's lead. They weren't leaving Summit out of spite. They were leaving because their loyalty had always been to me, not to the company name. Clearview's team was frustrated at first, but Jordan understood. This is actually good for both of us, he told me during a meeting. Summit keeps the clients who want infrastructure and scale. You get the clients who want personal service. We're not competing. We're serving different market segments. He was right, and more importantly, it meant that the transition could happen without destroying either company. On my last day of consulting, I stood in the break room where I'd spent countless hours over the years. The same coffee maker that never worked properly. The same refrigerator covered in safety notices and birthday announcements. The same view of the parking lot through the window. Garrett found me, there, leaning against the counter. Thinking about old times? He asked. Something like that, I said. It's strange. I spent 8 years here, and now it feels like someone else's life. That's because it was someone else's life, Garrett said. The version of you that worked here doesn't exist anymore. You've evolved. He pulled an envelope from his jacket pocket and handed it to me. This came for you today. From Harold. I opened it carefully. Inside was a handwritten letter on personal stationery, not company letterhead. The letter was brief. Damien, I know words can't undo what I did. I betrayed your trust, your loyalty, and your friendship. I convinced myself I was protecting my son's future. But the truth is, I was protecting my ego. You deserved better. The company deserved better. I hope Apex becomes everything Summit should have been. You have my word that I won't interfere, and I won't speak poorly of you. It's the least I can do. Harold. I folded the letter and put it back in the envelope. Are you going to respond? Garrett asked. No, I said. Some things don't need a response. That afternoon, I walked out of Summit Freight Solutions for the last time. No fanfare, no dramatic exit. Just a quiet closing of a chapter. As I drove away, I didn't look back. There was nothing behind me worth seeing. Everything that mattered was ahead. Apex Freight Solutions was launching in 2 weeks. I had a team I trusted, clients who believed in me, and investors who saw potential. Most importantly, I had something Harold never gave me: complete control over my own future. I'd been fired, betrayed, and nearly destroyed. But I'd survived. And now, I was building something better, not out of revenge, but out of purpose. That evening, I met with Allison, Kevin, and Rachel at a small restaurant downtown. We toasted to new beginnings with glasses of wine and plates of food we were too excited to eat. To Apex, Rachel said, raising her glass. To Apex, we echoed. And, for the first time in months, I felt something I hadn't felt since the day Harold fired me. I felt free. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell, so you don't miss any upload from us.